This is Bam Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with David Sidoni. How you doing tonight?
I'm fantastic. Thanks so much for having me.
We're going to talk about how to buy a home. We've got your URL there that will be fully clickable, and we're basically going to be talking to people who maybe hadn't thought that they could get a home. And that's something a lot of time first time home buyers they don't know what to do, and this is what we're going to talk about. We'll talk about your story though. Before we get into that, we ask every guest on the show a couple of questions like what motivates you and why do you do what you do?
Well, what motivates me with how to buy a home was after over a dozen years in real estate, I saw how disrespected and ignored first time home buyers were. I was in the fortunate position, later on in life, I was 49 years old when I started this whole how to buy a home movement that I could be given back. So the it's a passion project and a labor of love that blew up. And
Mhm.
now I'm just helping as many people as I can because unfortunately, like a lot of big corporations or big industries, they're thinking about the bottom line, and the people who get hosed are the people at the bottom of the totem pole.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of times people don't know, they go through recommendations, they find realtors or, it's like my father was a, insurance agent. So
Yes.
people go by like, and he'd have deals with realtors, because he's like selling
Yep.
insurance. He'd be looking for people buying houses, so they'd have kind of deals to like lock people. Here's the realtor, here's the banker, here's people could get locked into these kind of connections. It might not be the best deal for you. So,
Yeah. And in today's age, people have more opportunity to do research.
yeah,
And it's one of those things people reach out to me and say, okay, what are the top 5 questions I have to ask a realtor? And I would love to be able to give everyone that in black and white, but truly, to really understand who the best fit is for someone, you have to understand so much more about each individual's personal position.
yeah, it's like individualism or customization. That's a big thing today. Like I'm a software guy. Like I wear a bunch of hats. Like I'm a software designer, business analyst in my day job, producer on this podcast, and a musician. So I wear a bunch of hats.
Yeah.
But the kind of thing that today is the big, uh, you know, selling point is that we can make very customized solutions. And I think when people deal with services, they don't want the cookie cutter service. They want to know that you've actually listened to their story, you listen to their situation, and actually heard them. And people wonder, like, are you really listening, or are you just going to sell me the package you sell everybody else?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing about buying a home that I saw for all these first time home buyers was it wasn't necessarily that the agent or the lender wasn't, didn't know about other or didn't have other packages or weren't offering other packages. That's what I meant. They actually didn't even know that other options were available to these people, which could have saved them tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah. Yeah, well, sometimes, like, your knowledge base is, like it could be just, like, you're running on kinda, like, what you know, like, and then you don't go into what you don't know, right? So you just stick
Yeah,
with what's comfortable, and it's not that you're phoning it in, but it's like you might have a comfort zone. It's like, "Well, I don't know what happens if I go there."
exactly.
So you stick with this something that's like, "Well, this has been working, so I stick with it." That
Yeah,
isn't always the best deal for the individual.
yeah, absolutely.
So, like, a lot of people would, like, rent, like, I was a renter for a lot of years, and then I had an opportunity to be an expat, and I lived in Japan, and I socked away a bunch of money. When I came back, I got a house because I had this opportunity to make this, like, big, so I come down to, like, $50,000 down payment.
Yep.
I could get into the house. I was a first time home buyer, and if I hadn't gone to Japan, I didn't know how I was gonna get that money. And so I was renting, but because I went and did that expat thing, as I suddenly had the money, then I had better options. But so we deal with people who are renting these crazy rents today. Um, you know, it's like how do people handle that?
It's been the biggest question over the past decade for sure, is the affordability of a down payment. And one of the things that got me started in really wanting to just kind of be this voice that people heard coming from a place of experience, I can let you know, last year, the average first time home buyer, their average down payment was between 8 and 9%. You'd be shocked at how many people still think you need to put 20% down.
Yeah,
And
a lot of
that
people.
8 and 9% includes a whole lot of people that got help from family to maybe put 20% down. I can tell you the thousands of people that we helped, the average person for us was putting down 3 or 3.5% down.
Wow.
And I think just explaining that, and since I've been doing this since 2006, because I'm in Southern California. So when I was doing it myself, yeah, nobody's coming up with, no one in their 20s is coming up with 20% down on a
And California,
$600,000 house,
yeah, California is like you guys are like I live in the Northeast and it's like pretty bad, but not
Yes, it is.
anywhere near it. Like we're talking about like 400,000. You guys like 900,000 million. We're like 700,000. Everything's
Yeah.
like crazy. So here, back in the day, it's like it was like 200,000 was a lot, but
Yeah.
now
Well,
everything's like 400 500.
yeah. And so I kind of cut my teeth here and I learned how to get creative and find all those other options for people. And, for someone like you, we had someone on the show who was finishing up her 10 years in the Air Force in Germany. And when she reached out to us, I was like, oh my gosh, you've got a VA loan, 0 down option.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah, go with
but
that.
yeah, but and no PMI on those, no private mortgage insurance.
Yeah, yeah.
But she was like you and she had some money saved. So by understanding the process and getting hooked up with the right team, she did a ton of shopping in Germany online. They were doing video walkthroughs. And
Yeah.
by the time she landed, she was in a house.
She knew what she wanted. Yeah.
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 Yeah. It's and helping people understand that the affordability factor is, it's not just, oh, you could if you could figure out how to save a down payment, you can buy a home. That's absolutely a part of what it is, but so much more. It's like, oh my God, you're already spending $2,000, $2,500, $3,000 a month in rent.
Yeah.
That's a lot of times I talk about buying a home right now isn't a sexy deal. It's just creating a rent replacement strategy so that you don't wake up 2 years from now and go, wow, that was 50 grand I just paid to my landlord,
Yeah. Well, the rents are crazy. So it's just, it's going to go from 2,000 to 3,000 pretty fast. And there's no equity. And it's not an asset. And then,
Yeah.
Somebody could decide, renovate, and then they're going to knock it up to 4,000 a month.
Yeah, and what's happened is over the past 10 years, the average age of the first time home buyer was 30 years old, and then went to 31, and then it went to 32. Well, in the last 3 years, we've gone up. The average age of the first time home buyer has been 35, 36, and 38 years old. So that means someone who's got a decent job is renting at $2,000, $3,000 a month for the time they're 30 till they're 38. That is a lot of money.
It's a lot of money going down the tubes,
Yes.
and you start looking at like you gotta look at your budget and look at where your cash is going. And it's like that's that down payment. I think a lot of people are like you're saying, that like you don't need the 20%. You could come into the single digits, and that makes it that you could jump on that train a lot faster instead of wasting that money on rent.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, it gets scary, but sometimes, it might not be much more than a first and last.
Yeah.
If you're looking to go to another apartment next year and you're renting for 3,000 a month, if they're asking for 6 grand or 10 grand, you could end up in a $400,000 condo at 3%. That's only $12,000.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
it makes a lot of sense. And you can come up with like ideas of like how you could not that you stay with your mom or dad, you stay with your brother for a couple months to save the cash, and then boom, you're in.
I had someone who we interview people on the show, and no one in his family had ever bought a home. His parents didn't have any money. No one could help him. And as they got to they came up with a number. They said, okay, we're going to put 3% down and 3% closing costs. So they were looking at $300,000 homes, and they were doing, okay, 6% on $300,000. That's how much we need. Well, as they got towards the end and they almost had their number, they were like, well, we can't ask for money. But then his wife's parents said, move in with us. You pay $2,000 a month. Well, in 90 days, they had saved $6,000 that they would have spent on rent.
That's what I'm saying. Like use the find your brother, your cousin, your aunt, your
Yep.
uncle, and say, will they help you out? Not that you're gonna be there being a lazy cousin. You're actually going to get your house.
Well, and
you
that
know?
was the thing. They had shown that they had a plan in the first place, and when they showed them the spreadsheet, they were like, "We're only $5,000 away." They all said, "Great, we're going to do it." And by the end of he told me by the end of the 90 days, they were ready to get the hell out of there. But
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, like
it's a
staying
little
with your
crowded.
families are usually like it might sound like a good idea till you do it.
Yeah.
you
But
know.
that the creativity of trying to figure out how to, whether it's utilizing, down payment assistance programs, whether it's utilizing a VA loan in rural areas, you can do a zero down loan with something called USDA.
Mhm.
Um, and there are all these options out there, but I think what the most of the general public, what I've learned in listening to them is that people don't realize that so many first time home buyers are using that 3% and 3.5% down. And they're also finding ways to get lower interest rates, whether they're using what we call a mortgage interest rate buy down. There's just so many different things, but if you just look at that cookie cutter option, you're never going to see all the possibilities that could happen for you.
Yeah, you really need to do as much research as possible to try to find what's good for you. I mean, in some cases, being a homeowner can be scary. Like you buy a house like I wanted a house that was new, that was brand new built, so I didn't have to worry about having to buy a new furnace and buy a new roof and do all this stuff because I didn't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
Some people might have skill sets. Well, I could take something because I actually have uncles or friends and I actually know how to fix it. So you have to know who you are, right? And know, are you somebody that can actually fix the problem? Are you somebody like, no, I can't, or you don't even have the budget to fix the problem, right? So you have to kind of figure out what you can handle and what you can't.
Yeah. And I think that that's the great thing with the new bills is that a lot of people are thinking, okay, I'm not a fix it person. Maybe they're like you, they're, a software person or a musician, not exactly known as the greatest handyman in the world. I hear you. I'm the same way, man. And, but those new homes, last year, what we were seeing was they were offering crazy deals. Like when they got to the end and they were trying to sell out their last few units,
Hmm.
they were saying if you came through the builder and used their lending people, we had people getting homes with a 3.99% 30-year fixed loan because the builder wanted to sell it when interest rates were at 6.8%.
Yeah,
And that, even for the guy who was handy and was like, oh, I want to buy a used, it was just too much to pass up. You got to go for
yeah,
it.
yeah. I was lucky because I got into a brand new subdivision, and I was like one of the second people in a subdivision that wanted to have 60 people in it.
Oh my gosh. You
So
got
the
instant
builder
equity, baby.
Yeah, so the builder was trying to get people in, and people were ones like the when you looked at it, it didn't look that great because it was like building going on. So some people
Yeah.
might say, well, I don't want to see this place where all these, all the construction equipment's there, the piles are there. It's not even, division's not finished. But I was like, hey, I don't really care. I'm getting a brand new house, and eventually this is going to look cool. Maybe in 3, 4 years, it took like 7, but they finally filled it up, and now it's like my equity's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's every purchasing possibility has so many different things and options and variables that can and will change. And having that vision can be an important part of the entire process.
Yeah, then you gotta look at, like, all the options that are out there, you got foreclosed homes, you got, like, areas that wanna bring people in, like, they wanna build communities of people, like, giving you, like, options, to try to kinda not the homestead, but there are things where they wanna get people to move in.
Oh yeah, 2025 is starting to see a brand new crop of first-time homebuyer grants that are coming for specific sectors of specific zip codes.
Mhm. Yeah,
It's
you gotta look into that, right? People gotta
yeah,
think out.
it's a government funding to, create areas of the community that they want to build up. And, by bringing families in, that always tends to do that a lot more. And they're not available to investors. They're just for people that do it as a primary residence. And that's why so much of the emphasis on the show and the How to Buy a Home platform is to explain to people you can do all the research you want online, but that is the black and white, one size fits all answer.
Mhm.
Doing this for 2 decades now, the number one mistake I see people making is thinking that they don't want to bother a good realtor or a good lender early. Where if you talk to that person a year before you're ready to buy, they might know, oh, this builder has this thing coming up. Oh, this grant is coming next year. And at the same time that you're waiting it out with them, they're also going to be able to give you the right advice on how to save, how to work on your credit score, how to work on your debt. And that way you don't have to go online and try to do it all yourself.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people just, like, think everything is, like, do it yourself when, like,
Absolutely.
you do have to, reach out and, maybe just call people like the old style, because
Yeah.
everybody has all these, social platforms, right? And they think they just gotta go, like you mentioned, like Zillow, or they have these, like, online things, and they think, well, like, that's so convenient. But they going back into Rolodex and actually doing, like, the face-to-face talk or the online talk through somebody like you, that you're willing to, you book people and you talk to them. You're saying it's like just that one-on-one individual right size for your situation. That's
Yeah.
what people want, right? That's what they actually need.
Well, and the hard part about so many of these online places you find out there, there's no vetting at all for whoever they recommend to you. They you know who they're recommending to you? You know whose picture is on that Zillow post? Whoever paid Zillow the most that month.
Yeah, the
That's who
advertising.
gets that spot.
Yeah.
That's why, I started this as just free education. The people started calling me saying, "Who do you know in Tennessee, Chicago, Nashville?" And I've been in it 20 years. So, there are some real estate companies that will recommend agents to you and they have 20,000. I think last time I counted, we have 224. So
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
They are vetted and they're experienced. And if you don't want to go to someone recommended by me, fantastic. I'll give you all the resources you need to know those questions and to make the phone calls. But I'm 54 years old and my 18-year-old son is home from college and he couldn't do crap at college because he didn't know how to pick up the phone and talk to anybody because he's just been clicking a button on his phone for the last 3 years of his life.
Yeah,
And
that's
when you're
that's
talking about a $500,000 purchase, you better figure out how to interview somebody and make sure that they're the right person for you.
yeah, it's really hands-on. You do have to do that work of, because we've gotten, because of the pandemic, into this thing where, people don't want to do the kind of handshake face to face or even manual research, right? They just want to
Yeah.
go and ask AI a question. Now, AI is great. Like, I'm a techie,
Yep.
and but AI has a habit of giving you what it thinks you want, right? And how it determines what you want sometimes is not, it's like based on whatever was given. Like, so whatever it learned on, it's limited. It doesn't know everything. Like, people say, "Oh, it knows all human knowledge." No, it doesn't. So
It
so
it
so
I
the
always
so
tell people if you saw a flow chart of like when you come to me and say I want to buy a house, then I'm going to say, okay, well, let me ask you these questions. And then based on those questions, there are billions of different directions that
yeah,
we could go. It's like I talked to a doctor who he was researched for a year before he reached out to me. Meanwhile, in that year, the properties in his neighborhood went up 9%. So he lost that equity. And then he reached out to me and he said, I want to do this, this, and this. And told me exactly he wanted a duplex. He wanted to use a physician's loan. End of story. I said, okay, how about I get you in touch with a local person and they ask you all the questions? So he got in touch with a local person. They started asking all the questions. And then he started saying, well, what about this? No, there's this. No, there's this. And then he stopped himself and he said, oh my God, I'm like those patients who come in and read WebMD to me.
yeah. You think that
And
they're
he slapped
not.
himself in the face.
Yeah, well, sometimes you gotta know what you don't know, and otherwise you might pin yourself into, like, a box. You like, 'cause you only know so many. You can't be an expert at everything.
And I
right?
tell people all the time, it's not a bad thing. You might still buy a house that way, pinned in the
Mhm.
box, but I'm almost positive it's not the best way you could have done it.
Yeah, it's better to have a more expansive viewpoint to be open to other possibilities. You might have been locked in because like, oh, your brother bought a house this way, your father did, your uncle did, your aunt did. You know, like that's the way that you know, and it makes you feel comfort. It makes you feel safe, right? Because you think it's something tried or true to you. But like you do need to look at that the world is changing, and there's all kinds of information people don't know about programs all the time. My daughter's like, always looking for grants. She's an artist and she's
Oh, yeah.
always looking for grants and she finds them. She finds 5,000 here, 10,000 here. And then she's working as a working artist. And people say, oh, artist, you can't make money. My daughter's making money because she looks at what she can find. And so, like, if you look for what you can find, like you're saying, you could find programs, you could find grants, you could find situations where you're actually going to get a preferential rate or better, conditions, or you never know until you look for it.
And the people that are involved that do the service for the individual first-time home buyers, that's what we're doing all day long. If you're talking to a local lender in Nashville, that local lender is checking out what's going on because the grants and the programs, they're different state to state, but they're also different county to county. They're different municipality to
Mm,
municipality.
yeah.
Individual cities will have different things. So getting that, I tell people almost every first time home buyer that comes to me as the guru to ask me questions, I can tell you 90% of them have spent way too much time researching, trying to figure out how to do the job of buying the home when they should have spent all that time figuring out how to hire the person that's going to walk hand in hand with them, that's going to be their true advocate, not just a salesperson that's paying to have their face splashed all over the place online, who when someone finally reaches out to them, I mean, it's funny here in my studio, I have a can of spam on purpose because
This
if
is bad.
you want your phone to ring and get texts and emails, the simplest way to do it, fill out a real estate website.
Yeah, you'll get the spam. Yeah, yeah, you get the big time spam. but
Yeah.
but what made you want to go into podcasting? Because did you find it was actually a really good like you know return on your time investment or
I'm
effort?
the I'm the luckiest fool in the world. I do. In 2018, my wife looked at me and said, "You're only happy when you work with the Disneyland people," which for me in Southern California, I worked there in high school and college. And as a realtor, all my first time home buyers came from Disneyland. So here I am trying to sell real estate to people who go to the happiest place on earth every day. Um, and so I looked at everything. And 2018, well, we're pre TikTok, at least I believe at some point, or maybe just starting. Um, but it was Facebook and Facebook groups and Instagram and YouTube. And I'd had a little bit of a history in my 20s. I did some television shows and stuff, and so I thought I was going to be a YouTube star. I will say the best thing that I did while I was trying to build a social media, shooting videos, and then trying to get the YouTube going was I listened to other social media experts, multiple different podcasts. And I believe it was Gary Vaynerchuk who said, audio is an important part of what you're going to do. So I did podcasting as a total afterthought accident.
Mm,
Then it turns out the passive listening style of podcasts is perfect for people researching something as intense as buying a home. So when they're washing the dishes, walking the dog, commuting to work,
yeah.
suddenly, and I was just doing it as a side thought. I really thought it was going to be for me, for my local people, if I couldn't meet them, that day.
You can do it that way. Yeah.
I'm like, oh, well, listen to this. A lot of the stuff that we're going to do next week, I covered in this episode on, how to use online searches or what to look for in inspection. All that stuff. I just thought, it's going to be extra. Next thing you know, I start getting calls from people saying, I love what you're saying. Who's like you in Denver? Who's like you in Seattle?
Hmm.
And that's when I reached out to all my real estate friends. And now I'm, almost 6 years into this with the podcast, and we started in 2019, early. And I am so, I enjoy the process of being able to talk and realize that wherever people are in their life, they could stop and start it, and they can get the information that they are specifically seeking. It's not just, something that they're stopping by when they're scrolling.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, it's a great thing about podcasting. Even though this is video, the majority of the platforms we're on are audio.
Yes.
I'm on like 15, 16 platforms, and most of them, 4 of them are video, the rest of them are audio. So, podcasting is great, like you said, for that fact that, the person on the airplane, person sitting, driving in Uber, listening to Uber, wherever they're at work, with the headset on. They're able to get all this information. It's kind of like the talk radio phase. People like to listen to talk radio personalities. Podcasting became, it's very authentic, and doesn't feel like an infomercial unless you build it that way. That's why I do live podcasting. But
yeah, I love the live format. As the podcasting became more of something that I realized was reaching the listener base for me, I started then modeling in my head the Dave Ramsey style, who, I disagree with almost everything he says about first-time home buying, but homie created a talk show where people would call in and ask questions about freaking finances. I mean, the guy had something going on there. So that I love the live streaming aspect of it. And, as soon as I get rolling here, every year I start adding new things, and live streaming is something that I want to add so that people can just reach out to me and ask their question directly. Right now I'm answering it all through the website, but I love the ability of being here and being able to say, oh, there's someone in Florida who has a question about this. Let's see what you got.
Yeah, that type of like a radio kind of talk show call in.
Yeah.
Like the cool thing about this live format is that people, when they see it and hear it, they feel like it doesn't feel like it's forced or staged. And so the authenticity of it brings credibility. So
yes.
Then that's where the kind of key selling point of the idea of being in this space as a podcaster is that's what we brings to. And then I'm a long form podcaster. A lot of people said, oh, you should only go 15, 30 minutes. I have always stuck to, since 2016, like the hour format. And people will tell you to go, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't. But, it worked for me because it gives people the opportunity to actually listen to something, and actually, 15 minutes into something, you might just get into it. But if you actually talk to somebody for an hour, you actually get to a lot of meat that, if you have the attention span to stick to the meat.
And that's the beautiful thing about it, is there's always another episode with another topic. But if someone is, my specific audience, and the reason why, being an education platform on something that, yes, people do, but it's not like I'm going to have a listener that stays with me for 10 years. They're going to listen to learn this topic, and then they're going to move to the next phase. And that's why I don't talk about everything in real estate. I only talk about this one thing, because every other real estate talks about every phase. Oh, after you own a home, then what do you do about insurance? And what do you do?
And they're trying to keep people in. They're trying to keep a repeat customer. But that's not your model. You're going for a different model.
Yeah, and I'm not selling anything. I'm educating them, and if people want to, connect with the people that we've gotten in our group, great. If you don't, that's fine too. But the goal is that everybody comes out of it going, okay, listening to that guy to work every day, I learned a little something. I actually met one of the guys who, a young couple, and the guy, he was the one that listened to the podcast. I was going to an event in Nashville, and I was meeting a whole bunch of other realtors there. And one of them was the realtor that I connected him with. And she said, can I bring him? And I'm like, sure. He'll be the only, regular non-realtor person there. But when I said hello to him, he was like, oh. And I was like, what? He goes, sorry, I'm a completist. So I listened to all 150 episodes in the last month, and I listened to you at 2 times speed. I'm not used to your normal talking voice.
Yeah, you never know. People got quirky. You know, you meet people at the convention, you find out. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, okay.
Yeah. Hey, if you got to listen to me at chipmunk speed so that you can learn, I love it. Love
Yeah,
it.
everybody's got their own style, how they learn.
Yep.
But,
Yep.
a couple of the topics I wanted to get to in terms of, like, the on affordability, I think we were talking about it,
Yes.
but a lot of people still, like, they're super intimidated by the price of homes and the interest rates, um, and so, maybe are there, like, maybe top 3 things that people can think about to ease their mind regarding, like, the on affordability aspect?
Yeah, it was a big topic of the podcast last year. Especially as we got into campaign season. And the one thing that I reiterate to everyone is you might be, like you said, you might be looking to do, oh, this is the way my brother bought a house or my father bought a house. People don't realize is the market right now is the most unique one we've ever been in. And understanding if you're sitting around waiting for a crash, it's not going to happen. And that's because of one thing and one thing only. Nothing the presidential people were talking about and nothing CNN and Fox News are talking about right now. It's low inventory. We have
Yeah,
had a shortage of home inventory for 13, 14 years now.
yeah, so
So,
that's not happening anytime soon.
yeah, we're 4 to 7 million homes short. And it was because this is the scary part. This is what I tell people. It's like, I'm in your ear holes right now because you need a real estate nerd to interpret everything for you. And that's what I do. And 2008, 9, 10, 11, and 12 were the only 5 times in our history that we've ever built less than a million homes. And that was because of the big crash.
The crash because they overbuilt or they built and there was, like, too much inventory, so then they got burned, so they didn't wanna be in that position again.
Yeah. Or half of them went bankrupt. That's what
Yeah,
happened. There
so
was
then
no one,
we're not even there.
you
The
know,
players aren't there anymore to even do it.
I could tell you where I am in Southern California in Orange County. There were 4 big, huge lots that were all set to build. 2007 and 2008, the dirt was down. That dirt sat there till 2013. They didn't
Yeah,
build a damn thing on it. So the low inventory means that economics 101, the supply and demand. So there is not going to be a quick fix answer as far as how do things get more affordable. But as we talked about at the top, most people don't realize that there's so many different affordable options that people have been doing before housing affordability was all over the news. In
mhm.
2020 and 2021, everyone was freaked out to buy a house. It was incredibly affordable back then because the interest rates were as low as 3%.
Yeah, yeah,
But people were still using 3% down payment options. People were still using VA 0 down payment options. And what can get really interesting now is if you Zillow came out with a stat at the end of 2024. They, like I said, they suck at getting you a realtor or a lender. They're great at gathering data. And
yeah.
45% of home buyers last year in 2024 got an interest rate of less than 5%. And that's incredible when you realize that we were in a 6.5, 7% year. But that's one of those things that unless you're working with the right team, if you're going trying to buy a $300,000 or $400,000 house and you ask the seller for a $10,000 credit, you can use that $10,000 to buy down your mortgage interest rate. So
Well,
if it was,
that's
it,
cool.
yeah, so if it was at 6% and you get $10,000 and you can buy it down to 5 or 4.5, then
That's the plan.
suddenly that
That's
monthly
the plan.
payment becomes affordable.
Well, that's where you gotta think about, like, can you afford it? Because people get they look at cars today, it's like, be like, are you really gonna spend 100,000 on that truck? Like,
Yes,
should you really spend 100,000 on that truck, or should you buy a house? You got people, it's like, well, you gotta start reprioritizing what you're doing, right?
people
'Cause
say Yeah, people will come to me and then I'll get them in touch with someone and they'll start going, they'll go, well, they found out they were only approved for 400,000, but they really need to be at about 450 or 475. And then I go, okay, show me everything. And then I look and see they have a $700 car payment. Cool. That's about $75,000 worth of loan approval. So if you're only approved, so go sell your car right now. Okay. And then go take a little bit of cash and buy a used car. Now suddenly you're approved for 475. Now that's a quick fix. Of course, I'm not recommending everybody do that, but the first piece of affordability is to look at the budget. But the way that I get people into talking about budgeting is making sure they understand so many of the myths that are creating fear, and to help them understand that if they take their rent and they put it into a mortgage, your rent is going to pay most of your mortgage anyway.
Yeah.
The extra you have to pay is just like putting money into a savings account. You know, I've had people that they're like, well, I pay $3,000 a month. I don't want to pay a $3,800 a month mortgage because that's what I did the numbers and I found out. And I say, okay, you pay $3,000 in rent. What else do you do? Well, we also put $500 into this retirement fund, and we put $500 into our stocks. And I'm like, it's time to diversify your portfolio. Instead of you're already paying an extra $1,000 a month into other things, pay $800 into your house, and
It's your
then
property. It's yours. I mean, because the thing is, like, the volatility, people putting all this money into like Bitcoin, or crypto, or like I said, they buy some crazy Hemi, or they buy some crazy truck. It costs like 70 to 90,000. Some of these trucks you look at, these SUVs, they're like 90,000, 75,000. Like,
but unlike Bitcoin and crypto, that has zero chance of being worth more.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you buy that, it's gonna drop down to like half or less than half, or crap out, and then you can't sell it at all, or you get hit, and then you can't sell it. So it's like, what are you doing? It's like the property to me is like that. That's it's just a no brainer. But to have your own property and be in control of your life, that's the thing about having. Like, I was a renter, and I rented a condo. And I was thinking, oh, what would I buy it? But then the condo had so many problems. It's like, I'm not buying it.
Yeah.
I went into it, and then it's just like, the furnace was bad, the roof was bad, all these things. It's like, no, like, it's like, at first I got in, then I found out what was going on with it. The guy tried to sell me it. It's like, no, I don't want
it. That's the world's greatest home inspection. Live there.
I lived there. It was a good thing I didn't go try to buy it off the bat, because I found out, I was like, whoa, this thing had a lot of problems.
Well, once you get to that point where you're starting to think about control, that's when I tell people, all right, it's time for you to get deep into research. Because if you're in a position where, you're in a condo or a home that is owned by a landlord, who knows when they decide to sell that? Almost every rental agreement gives you maybe 60 days, usually just 30. If they decide they're going to sell. And so, one of the other things when it comes to affordability that I talk to a lot of people about is, because that average age is so insane at 38 years old now, we're looking at people who have their job set up and have 401ks. And they'll be contributing big into their 401ks. And I'm like, it's time to diversify your portfolio. Reduce your contribution into your 401k. Your 401k is safe. That's why you love it. Cool. So's a home.
Well, home is a better deal than the property, because I mean, like here in New Hampshire, there are a lot of people that were living in these downtown, in these buildings, and then these investment companies came in and they kicked the renters out.
Yes.
And then started boosting the rent from like $1,500 a month to like $2,700 a month. So that's the kind of thing that can happen when you don't have a house. So it's like, you thought you were doing okay, and it's like now you can't find a place to live. You got to go keep people in the same place, because you get kicked out of your rent. Is like, because that's what some of these people are doing. They're going and buying up properties and then changing the price on them. It's like so you're kind of you could fall victim to that rather than being in charge of your life.
And that can happen with an individual owner, but it can definitely happen with apartment buildings. And, rents have been just the last 20 years has been something I've never seen. I mean, I went back and studied all the history, and, rents go up with inflation. So 3 to 4% a year. So over a decade, that's like 30 or 40%, right? So
Mhm.
1990, it went up 41%, 91 to 2000. But then from 2000 to 2010, rents went up 83%.
Yeah,
And
it's
from
crazy.
2010 to 2020, it went up 72%. And we're already like 40% already this decade. That's unsustainable. And
Yeah,
so,
yeah. I mean, if you get into a rent and then suddenly it's like you're 2,500, then you're gonna be paying like 3,500 pretty soon. Because that's the way the directory. So if you don't think you can afford a house, you look at it like you're gonna be paying house like money.
and remember, fixed. It won't feel as affordable today. But once you realize it's a rent replacement strategy and you're using that biggest monthly line payout as something that you're doing, but then once you've done 4 or 5 years of the same payment, when
Yeah,
you've been watching your monthly payment go up every year, how fun is that when you're your 5th year, you're like, "I'm still paying the same thing." That's
yeah.
awesome.
You're locked in. You're paying like under 2,000. Like I bought my house in 2008. And I'm paying the house is worth 450, and I'm paying like 1,600 per month.
Jeez.
You know, and there are people paying rents. They're like
Uh-huh.
2,500, 2,700, 3,200, and I'm like, I got a house.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like that's the lesson. They
and
like look at like
and
what happens.
and you were talking about control. What happens when if things go sideways again? You know, that when you don't know where you're gonna live or you get tossed out of a place, that's it. You get nothing.
Yeah,
But
there's not.
you have all that equity in your home. I mean, you have so many more options, so many more moves you can make because of
Yeah,
that.
it's like your people like you're talking about 401ks, like your house. You don't want to be getting loans on your house. Like if you don't, you
Yeah,
can. But I mean, you can make decisions. Though. You could if you're into like if
yeah,
you're an entrepreneur and you want to start a small business, you could make a smart move and leverage it to get a business loan and then even make more money. Like if you make a good business decision and you're an entrepreneur,
yeah.
like now you have an asset that when you go to get the business, you go to the banks, you have something you can say,
I always tell
you
people
can
when you're
show.
buying I tell people when you're buying your first home, you don't want to think of that purchase as an investment. Just realize it's going to be a safe, wonderful thing for you. But I was talking to one of my realtors that I work with all over the country. He bought his first home when he was in college because the landlord told him he was selling, and he didn't even tell his roommates that he bought it. He just kept collecting the rent because he was the one who paid the rent. And then he told me he still has that property from the 90s, and he got an SBA with it so his wife could open a business. I mean, you
Things can
can't play the
happen.
game unless you got a game piece.
Yeah, if that's by having the, you being on the chessboard, instead of playing checkers. Like you gonna
Yep.
play or you gonna play chess, or checkers. Like you start thinking about like you think of strategy. Whether you're gonna do it, like maybe that's not the initial thing. Is it's an investment, and you're gonna be some guy flipping houses because that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about how to get a first home. But the idea once you have an investment, you can make a smart decision. That might, your wife might have an idea and she
Yeah.
wants to go in business and she wants to, be out there doing TED Talks and
Yep.
build symposiums and have webinars and like, yeah, maybe you invest in some work there and then boom, that jumps off. So it's like there's things that you can do. I mean, in this space, that's kind of what happens. I deal with people, that's their story. Um,
Yeah.
so it happens a lot. There's a lot of people out there doing that.
Well, I mean, I was in the position to start this company because my wife said you're so frustrated with real estate, and you always tell me when you're mad about something, don't bitch about it. You have two options,
Do something.
leave or do something. So
Yeah.
So then I started doing something, and now it's been so neat to be able to talk to people because for me, it would not have been simple and easy for me at 21 years old to buy a condo, but knowing what I know now, I rented in the 90s in my 20s in Hollywood. Spent $104,000 in rent, and at the end of it, I got a $1,500 security deposit back.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
I mean, do you know what would have happened if I'd rented from 1990 or if I'd owned from 91 to 98?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
crazy money.
and and it was just the fact that I didn't have the information that someone told me. And I tell people, what's the worst that's going to happen if when you're 21 and you want to figure that out? You figure out you can't do it, but now you have a plan. So
Yeah,
great. So maybe you do it at 23, 24, 25. You're going to be well ahead of what's the norm right now. It it just hurts my heart to see so many people rent because they believe the myths. You
yeah, well,
know,
that's kind of fear. Fear is like, we talk on a podcast, fear and safety. You know,
yeah,
people get motivated by fear and a sense of safety. They think the wolf's at the door. They think something's going to happen. They get, very pessimistic. You see the people who are successful. It's not that they don't make mistakes, but they're willing to, look past the fear and make intelligent decisions. You don't just play. You're not like playing Russian roulette. You got to make an informed decision. If you do an informed decision, then you're probably going to come out okay. It's like if you just and it might be something that's scary because like even if you got the information, you're still kind of like, well, I've never done this before. Well, that's fine. You can live with that. But at least you did, talk to somebody like yourself. You went out and you got the information. You did the work. You did the leg work. Then it's not going to be like just going out there and just listening to somebody and it's like, oh, I just took a shot without
yeah.
really looking at it.
Well, and it's funny, and you say, or they did the work and they talked to someone like myself. The beautiful thing of the age that we're in now is truly they don't even have to talk to me now. They can listen. You know,
Oh,
people can get all your wisdom now because of what you're putting out there. You and I live in this wonderful age where we can throw the content out. I don't know how many tens of thousands of people have listened to me and have never reached out to me,
wow.
but
Yeah, that's another thing. Like you don't even have to like engage. You could just sit there and listen or watch,
yeah,
you know,
it's a
which is
crazy
like,
world.
well, yeah, do the work. It's still doing the work. You sit there like, are you gonna watch the cat video
Yep.
on TikTok? You know, watch the kids doing the crazy stuff. It's like, well, that's funny. It's like, well, you take a little more time and watch how to buy a home.com. Go to your podcast,
Yep.
and then actually engage. And you can do it, like you said. You could be on your commute. You could be like, just doing some other task and just check it out your lunch hour. Like put the headphones on, drink some coffee, whatever, having a coffee break, check it out. There's all kinds of time that you can, that's why people like this form because you can fit it in to your
Well,
life.
people ask me all the time. I mean, like you asked, hey, how did the podcasting come about? And then now that the podcast is successful, people will say, well, how did you learn about it? And I'm like, how you get up in the morning and you start scrolling on your cup of coffee? I got up in the morning and I watched podcasts or listen to podcasts. I
Yeah,
watch YouTube videos because they will make freaking content about how to make content.
yeah.
you know?
Everything's out there. As a musician, and I go, if I want to learn a new piece of gear, I can
Yeah.
actually go on these how-to things, and before I even buy it, I can watch somebody actually go use it.
The gear
And
websites are incredible because
yeah,
the good ones that are unfiltered, they get all the sponsors, but they're like, just so you know, I might trash you. That
yeah,
authenticity
yeah,
you can't find that anywhere, man. That's
yeah. You get
incredible.
somebody to actually check something out and then tells you if it's crap. So
Yeah,
it's not just a total infomercial. This is the best thing ever. That's why nobody wants to watch that. They watch
yeah,
somebody that says, "Hey, this has some issues," or this is really good. It's like 75% of it's good and 25 is this, and they're very honest. That's the stuff I watch, and that's really cool when you have people that you're like, wow, like this the net is so useful in terms of the information you can get. Now you could spend your time just like watching cat videos, and that's fine if that's
sure.
what you want to do. but you actually can build up your knowledge base so you can actually make informed decisions and find out about things that you would have never known about without a lot of interaction. Like you said, you could just listen to your podcast.
Yeah.
You could go to your website and just pick up the tips without engaging. And that's, that what does that take? It doesn't take a lot.
Yeah. And if you're a curious individual, it's so interesting, Well, one of the biggest things that we're getting feedback on is I interview people who went through the process. And here I am pouring my guts out, all these years of experience, and then people reach out to me and I say, "What was your favorite episode I did?" "Oh, that one where that kid talked." It's because it's a real life story of how somebody listened in, took the information, and then you hear exactly, oh my gosh, this is what happened with the appraisal, and this is what happened with the extra down payment, and this was the other,
Yeah,
those
well,
type of,
real life, like people see it's not some actor or
yeah.
some stage thing, and they actually have a real person. If you are engaging at that level and having that kind of guest or that kind of conversation that's
Yeah.
what people love about this form, is that they get these real stories, that they like the vulnerability of a real person actually speaking their experience.
I told
You know,
you. Why do I do this? Because I sucked in my 20s and now I know enough. And I told my son who loves Back to the Future, I don't have a DeLorean, but I have a microphone. So
yeah.
I can't fix what I did, but I can fix it for everybody else.
Well, you pay it forward. I mean, that's part of like, anytime you're a mentor or a teacher or a coach or somebody out there, an entrepreneur giving people advice or an advocate, it's just like, you go out there and give people life hacks,
Yeah.
just like that's like a tag on the net, life hack. But that's what, people are looking for, people's experience. And if you communicate and you talk, like you said, it's like you got to go out and you know pound the flesh. Like talk to people. You know, my dad was a salesman. He was an insurance guy. He had to go out every day, cold calling, showing up on, finding new people to talk to. And over time, he built up this massive Rolodex of people to talk. Like your 200 some people that you dealt with.
Yeah.
Is like that's what you do. And when you do that, you build up a life, you build up experience, you build up stuff that you can lessons learned, right?
And it's more important than ever now because, there are so many people that can fake it. Realtor companies will tell you fake it till you make it. 87% of real estate agents quit in before their 5th year.
Oh wow,
And
they get it.
and
They'll
and
get it down.
yeah, but they might have a bitchin' Instagram feed. And it's like, so that's
Yeah,
why you got to do what your dad did. And my dad too. He was a salesperson for 30 something years. It's the talking to the right people and find the right experience, because the other stat that scares the bejesus out of me is last year 47% of realtors did not sell one home in 2024.
oh wow.
47%. Because what the public doesn't realize is the bar is so low to be a realtor. So part of your research, as much as you should research how the process works, you should also research again how the business works.
Yeah,
So that,
what's the like what the background of the realtor, like how many years have they been in the business? Have they won like sales awards? Can you actually check their
yeah,
their awards, check their record? You can you should be able to you want to know, like why would you work with somebody who's like they haven't sold a house in like 3 years?
look,
Well,
and do
you're
they
not-
work with first time home buyers? If
yeah,
you ever
right.
if you ever worked with a first time home buyer in the last 8 months, you have no clue what
What's going on?
it's like for them, because it changes all the time. These interest rates, these, everything, there's new jobs numbers and unemployment numbers and GDP and the Fed's cutting rates. And like I said, I will nerd out on you with this,
Oh
like,
yeah.
deep. but,
Well, that's what
but
you want. You want somebody that knows all the things that you should be looking at, right? And all the information that like you need to go to school. Like I said, like anytime
yeah,
luckily in IT, like part of our work is like we have to learn because things exponentially change in IT all the time.
Yeah.
We're living in the age of the AI, right? We have to certify ourselves to understand the tech, or we will get replaced. There are already programmers being replaced by AI if you don't learn about prompt engineering and machine language and all that stuff. If you think it's like, oh, I can just stand here and be like, not hit by it, you have to be aware of what's going on. You got to, read the tea leaves.
Yeah. People always ask me, are you afraid that AI is going to replace you? And I say no, because the minute I first heard about it, I understood that the way to work in the future is to mesh with them and become a prompt specialist and
Yeah, prompt
understand,
engineering, yeah.
yeah, how do I talk to AI? I would love it. It's the technology is not quite here yet, but in a few years, instead of you asking me a question on my website, I would love the day that, there could be an AI version of me on my website that can point you to, oh, listen to this podcast episode, watch this YouTube video where David talks about that. I don't care if it's not me, as long as everyone's getting the right information. That's what matters.
Yeah, it's just like the workflow engineering that you can do now, and the ability to kind of level up. Like the idea is like you could, as a small level business, can get the tools of like a Fortune 500. Because the
Yeah.
Fortune 500, they have all these data analytics guys. They have all these big consultants coming in telling them all these things. The thing about AI that's cool in the future is like you can have that A level consulting advice, right? You could have that automated flow that some programmer built that you had to pay $1 million, 2 million, $3 million for. Doesn't cost you that, right? You can get tools and capabilities it's like the 3D printer. People who have like a CNC machine off
Yeah.
of a 3D printer. It's like the idea that a small business can actually ramp up and do things without having to have the resources and the staff and the time expended. And that's the if you learn how to use it to build yourself up and give you advantages, that's the trick. That's how to stay ahead of the game.
Yeah. And it's so much of it depends on your game too. It's like people talk to me about first time home buying and AI, and I'm like, most of the people who are buying homes are too young to remember the movie that I loved as a child called War Games,
Yeah.
where where a supercomputer that was the size of a living room, because it was the 80s, learned, in doing thermonuclear global war, it
Games.
learned that there was no winner. And the only way to teach it that they shouldn't do it was to play tic-tac-toe, because there's never a winner. So people will say, what's AI going to say about buying a home? It's going to say the same thing I say. The math tells you, no matter how you slice it, the best time to buy a home was yesterday.
Yeah.
Tic-tac-toe.
It's always the logic is there, man. Machines like logic.
Yep.
Machines that is what they are. It's like zeros and ones, yes and no.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It gets more sophisticated, but that's what the basic is. Yeah, 0, 1, yes, no. Like the gray areas, it seems like it knows more now. Behind the scenes, it really still the yes and no. Um, it's just different case statements. Like the technology now is I can have tons of case statements of it. What if it's this? What if it's that? What is that? And it only has what we've put into it, right? So like it only
Oh,
learns
yeah.
what we have given it. You can give it new things all the time, so it can learn every day. But it only knows it doesn't know like tomorrow. It can kind of try to predict it based on what it had, but it's just a theoretical prediction. Based it's math and it can be pretty accurate. But your personal experience as a human being, that's the secret sauce. The machines don't have that. We're not there. We don't have data. There's no data. There's no in Star Trek Next Generation. We're not there. People might tell you that, but that's where we are. We're not there. Yeah, it
Yeah.
might. You might think we're there, but then no, we're not.
Yeah. I love Brett Spiner, though. I
Oh,
love me
he's
some
cool.
data.
Yeah, he's like next stage Vulcan, but he's
Yeah.
a machine. He's a machine. I grew up with the original. I still like.
Uh-huh.
I like them all. I mean, I'm a nerd, so whatever. But like track you down to the bone. But I want to thank you for being on the show. And if people go to howtobuyahome.com, what do they find there if they click on that?
uh, Whatever you need for whatever phase you're in. There's a starter kit. There's like three main places you can go. There's a starter kit, and you click on that and you'll get a 7-day email campaign that'll send you videos and walk you through everything you need to know so that you can at least feel like somebody told you where to start. The second thing is Ask David. Send me a question, I'll give you an answer. Most of the time, I'm going to ask you more questions to get the right answer.
Oh, that's cool.
Spoiler alert there.
That's what you want.
And then the third thing is if you feel like you're ready to go and you've done the research on yourself, you can ask me for what we call a unicorn realtor. We'll see if we got somebody. And then you interview them. Odds are they're probably going to be better than most people in town. They definitely sold more than 0 homes last year. And that's the vetted group of people. But most importantly, at howtobuyahome.com, you can find podcasts, YouTube, anything that you want to do so that you can walk forward confidently.
That's awesome. That's where we like to let people know that will be fully clickable within the podcast description. We're just live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Within the description of those podcasts, that link is fully clickable. We'll be on all the major podcast platforms where you can listen to or watch a podcast by tomorrow. I want to thank you for being a guest on the Family Electric Ghost podcast. I appreciate it.
This is fantastic. Thanks so much.
Have a good night.